I really want to play F1 right now, but I don't know, do I want to play single player or multiplayer?
Listen, only in multiplayer you will experience getting taken out in Monster Turn 1 every single time. You don't want to miss out on that.
No. What you really want is to get absolutely dominated by a computer-controlled car.
I can't really decide, so I think the best is to discuss that with you in the community and our guests on the newest Nitro Nights episode. Overtake is back with a new episode of Nitro Nights. My name is Rene, and this time we discuss something among the hottest topics right now, which is obviously the release of F1 2020. But no, we're not talking about what separates the player base in terms of simcade, arcade, sim racing. Instead, we talk about the archetypes playing the F1 games, which is either single player, right, the career mode and all the immersion you get there, or multiplayer side, which is all about competition and esports. For that, we've got two guests representing both sides. But before we dive into any of those topics, two things to say. First of all, let me know down in the comments below if you think this is sim racing, simcade, or arcade, because I think that will be a big one to finally decide. And the other thing is, let's have a look at the evolution of the career mode that we had so far in the F1 games.
A lot has changed since the early arcade days. And I mean, a lot. Back then, hot lapping was basically the only mode you could find, like in 1982's Pole Position from Namco. But as time moved on and video games conquered screens all over the world, graphics, sound, gameplay and also game modes improved a lot. A huge landmark in the evolution of F1 games was Grand Prix 2, which depicted the 1994 season, featured a full grid of teams and drivers, and introduced a championship mode with complete race weekends. A dream come true for Formula 1 fans all around the world. And it only got better from there. Grand Prix 3 had adjustable setups and technical failures. Formula 1 on Sony's PlayStation had commentary from Murray Walker, and when EA got their hands on the licenses in the early 2000s, things changed rapidly. We had a Formula 1 manager game, a fully fledged out career mode in F1 2003, and an overall huge leap in graphics and gameplay. Since 2009, Codemasters holds the license for the F1 games, and even though they had a rocky start, they now built the series into one of the biggest racing game franchises out there. And their interpretation of the career mode changed how chores like free practice can be gamified, fun, and important for the progress of the player's journey. With features like the 2-player career or the 2021 story mode Breaking Point, Codemasters showed their ingenuity in pushing forward how we play racing games today. Of course, not all that glitters is gold with the Cody games, as career mode hasn't changed a lot over the last couple of years, but still, their focus on the single-player experience is not to be dismissed.
We saw a lot of things that actually changed over the course of the time in terms of the single player, in terms of the career mode in the F1 games. But obviously, I don't want to discuss that with myself regarding, hey, single player, multiplayer, what do you really like? Instead, I got two nice guests that fit right into this. One of them is Marcel Kiefer. Obviously, you should know him because quite quick in terms of F1 esports. And then we got Alex Gillon on the YouTube world and kind of our single player that we brought into it. Not saying that you don't have friends, Alex. Don't worry.
True that.
Nice to have you guys here.
Thank you for having us.
So we saw it in the video already. There had been quite a few years now, even if we only look at the Codemasters time of F1 games. They have been in this business and sitting on this franchise for quite a while. Where did you start on it?
To be honest, I already started with EA, like back in I think 2001 or 2002 on the PC.
F1 Challenge?
Yeah, no, I think it was actually called F1 2001 or 2002. It wasn't the challenge one. It was a separate title. But it was like the first time I got in touch with the F1 games. But the game that I really grinded was on the PlayStation 2, F1 206. That was like my game.
So you started on a console. What was your first platformer console then?
Like I started on the PS2, always just on a controller. And after that, there was no F1 game anymore from 2006 until 2009, and that's when I got into serious business on the Wii with the motion control. I actually felt like an F1 driver back then. It was all because of Sepp, because he won in 2010, so I wanted to get back into it and bought it on the Wii, and yeah, so that was kind of my first time getting in touch. But for the competitive side, then after that I had a full break again, just sometimes casually every now and then, F1 2012 and I think 215 I also got, and just played on the controller every now and then when there was a GP. But then 2017 with F1 Esports, everything kicked off and I got into serious business, actually bought a proper wheel, not just motion control, and yeah. So
I would love to see footage of that. Unfortunately, we don't have any footage of you playing on the Wii U steering wheel.
I hope nobody filmed me, no.
We will find that. If it exists, we'll find it.
I'm not kidding. I actually did 100% races with this thing. I'm not kidding.
That must be great. What about you, Alex? Is it the same years? Where did you start with F1?
A bit later, actually. My first F1 game that I got into was F1 2006, but the Championship Edition version on the PS3. That was the first one that I grinded, and I remember for some reason I got really distinct memories of doing the formation lap, and making sure I turned traction control off and did the burnouts and stuff. It didn't matter, obviously, but I remember doing that quite vividly. And then, and then from there, moved on to F1 2009. Actually, I was on PSP.
So I was on the hardcore sim with the
yeah. The Wii U was definitely a hardcore sim.
I know I'm pressing buttons, but the Wii could no, I'm not sure about that. And then obviously from there, all the games since. So yeah, I don't know. I want to pick you up on you. The way you said years, all over the place. You were like 206, and then you went 2017. The way you pronounced the years was all over the place. You need to sort that out, right?
Yeah.
Alex starting with the diss immediately. Like, maybe he could become your PR manager and sort that out.
Sure.
But let's dive into the two archetypes that we kind of try to draw here, right? Like with Marcel as the multiplayer driver and you, Alex, as a single player. So first of all, give me your reasons why you became the type of player you are. Let's start with Alex.
It's interesting. For me, I sort of did come from single player. That's all I ever played. And then I kind of then went into multiplayer, and I sort of league raced on sort of F1 2012, 2013. And that's when I first started becoming kind of a content creator. It was very much a hobby back then, of course. But and then, that was my main thing, really, was league racing. I was practicing for that and didn't really play much career mode back then. And then sort of took a break from the games and then got back into it, but again, more single player. I think for me, I am, across all games, more of a single-player person. Anyone who watches any of my streams will know that I quite rarely do multiplayer. They're always saying, do co-op, do online. I'm like, no, I'm quite happy just doing single-player. So, yeah, I guess I had a brief interlude there where I was a multiplayer guy. But no, almost all single-player for me, yeah.
But why? Is it the immersion factor of the F1 games, or do you do single-player on all the other racing titles as well?
I think for me, I don't like having to wait for people. I don't like set up a lobby. Oh, you got to wait for the menus. And I know the F1 games are sort of notoriously quite slow at getting to the races in particular. But when I want to race, I want to just sit down. Right, I want to race right now. I want to choose where I start on the grid, and I want to just get on with it. And if I want to restart, I can restart. And I'm in control because I'm playing the game, and I've got this hour or however long I've got. Obviously, a bit different now. Now I'm doing it for content. But back when I wasn't doing it for content. I want to be in control. I want to do what I want to do rather than go, I want to play online. Search.
All right.
Wait. And then, you know what I mean? It's slow. I don't know.
You wouldn't have that problem, though, if your account would be named Marcel Kiefer. Then mostly the lobbies fill up quite quickly. So that shouldn't be an issue. But Marcel, why did you become then the multiplayer? Is it all about because you love competition, or is there anything else, particularly in these games, that brought you into multiplayer?
I mean, it is pretty simple. It's mainly the competition. Because F1 Esports is online, so I kind of had to go that direction. And so I've always stick to it. And usually my streams and content also revolves around people racing me because they want to see how close they get to my pace. And so, yeah, I've always been the kind of guy that wanted to fight others like real people, not just like computers that usually you can read quite easy. Like if I do single player, I always know when to send it into a corner, when they turn in, where their weakness is. And it's always like every single lap you can do the same thing. So with multiplayer, with real people, you cannot do that. And I think it's a bit more interesting.
We saw the video prior, which showed us the evolution of the career mode. When looking at the F1 titles right now, do you think that is their main focus? Is it the F1 career mode? Or do you think it's the multiplayer? Where do you think the studio is currently going?
I definitely think their priority is career mode. Unfortunately, they won't release the stats that they've got on the game. I would love to know the percentage of people that play career versus multiplayer, and it would be really interesting. But unfortunately, they keep that very close to their chest. But I definitely feel like, based on those stats, the majority of people do play career mode, so they concentrate more on career mode. That being said, I do feel like they more just concentrate on the casual player. Like, look at this year, the introduction of supercars and the F1 life and stuff. That's not really career mode. It kind of feeds in, but it's a good entry to career mode. It's not career mode itself. That kind of makes sense. So, yeah, I do think they concentrate on career more than online. But I think it's probably more so the casual player is what they concentrate on. The person who's gonna, I guess, or maybe back in the day would have walked into a video game store and had a browse and gone, yes, that one's for me. So, yeah.
It's obviously the license is pulling a lot of people in, right? Like, I play multiplayer on all the sim racing titles out there. Never a single player besides F1. That's the only one where I actually do single player just because the names are cool and the entire world around it. But Marcel, do you feel then that the multiplayer side, even though it is so strong nowadays, F1 esports is a huge thing, is it a bit left behind with the concentration on the career mode?
I do feel so, yeah. I think single player is still the main focus of Codemasters and EA, just because if you look at it, usually there's a big hype around the game at every single launch, because everyone wants to get the new cars, the new liveries, the new helmets, the new drivers, and race them. And then after a while it fades and all the hype just slowly eases off. And also the multiplayer is just like there's way less people. It's just usually the hardcore community, the sim racers, league racers that always want to compete. But the multiplayer doesn't really have any competitiveness in itself if you don't have league racing. Like, you have open lobbies, but there's no proper ranked system. There's a ranked mode, but that ranked mode doesn't really work. Like, if I do an open lobby, I usually find better drivers than in the ranked. And if the F1 game would have something similar, like iRacing, for example, with a rating, a proper competitive system, maybe including F2, F3, maybe even F4, or one day karting, I don't know. I mean, they have supercars now, so we can dream maybe of go-karts in the future. Shouldn't be that hard then. We could have like a proper like road to F1 kind of multiplayer ranked system, like in iRacing with these rookie D, C, B, A class and whatsoever with the safety rating. But because we don't have that, like, it's just like the multiplayer quickly dies off. Like, it's just, you're losing motivation, always feels the same. You kind of always have the same experience. Whilst in the single player, you can see different drivers move from team to team. You can also start in a different team. You can build your own team, all these kind of things. So I think, yeah, the main priority is single player, and I would wish it would be the same kind of focus on multiplayer, maybe something like iRacing.
But let's put the retention aside and like the longevity of multiplayer. Let's just assume we know that the F1 game, it sells well, right?
Yeah.
There are a lot of people getting into F1. So what needs to happen to get single player people that really like the career mode to get into multiplayer? Is there like a certain barrier that is too high? Are the lobbies too strong, or is there too many crashes? I know, like, what do you think keeps people in single player away from trying to compete against real people out there?
I think back in sort of, was it 2010 era, they had the sort of quick lobbies where you literally pressed the button, you were chuck straight in, you were racing like that. I did used to play those a little bit. And they do kind of have the sort of somewhat quick modes now that you can get in quite quickly. But I don't know. And then you either get rammed off straight away and you're like, oh, well, that was pointless. And then you go again, you get rammed off again, and you think, I'll go back to career mode. Or everyone's ghosted and you're not really racing. It's not the same, is it? When you're driving through everybody, it's not real racing, is it? So I don't know. It's interesting you brought up iRacing, because I do actually play a lot of iRacing and I really enjoy it. And that's obviously multiplayer first game. But it's really difficult. You know, the issue is iRacing is such a hardcore sim that the iRating and the safety rating works really well because you care, because you're a racer that's looking for performance, or looking to be the best at everything, including on your safety rating and iRating. Whereas I feel like F1 being more casual players, would they care? You know, I know in ranked it's got the safety rating and stuff, but if you introduced a system similar to iRacing, would anyone really care as much? I don't know if they would. I don't really have the answer, to be honest, but it's aimed at a more casual player. And for me, it is mainly about the speed of getting into the lobbies, and then making sure the lobbies are full. That's what a key barrier for me. And then also the quality of racing. How you solve those things is I don't know. Maybe you can. I don't know if you've got any ideas, but for me, that's my personal barriers into it.
The co-op mode, you mean? Yeah. Yeah, and I love it.
Yeah.
I have to say that. I love
Same.
that. Mm. It sounds a bit like, though, that what we would need for the multiplayer side is the career mode, right? Like the progression of whatever career, whatever progression it is, but to bring that from a career mode where you really see it and feel it every single time you're playing into a multiplayer so that your race actually have value, right?
Yeah.
As in, like, it either helps my rating or it looks good on my account because I got a 15% podium finishes, whatever, right? Currently, if you look at your modes, what is it you would wish for as a feature or as an improvement? So what's there for multiplayer? What, like, out of your head right now, would you wish for Codemasters and EA would have a look at?
No peer-to-peer, dedicated servers. That would be the first big step to improve already the online experience. Maybe, I mean, if we don't have something similar like iRacing, like a rating system or whatever, then the first step could to make it at least a more pleasant experience. Because like Alex said, there are sometimes ghosting, sometimes there's just too much lag. And you will still have lag with dedicated servers, but it will decrease the amounts of lagginess and issues that will occur online. And I guess it would just make it more fun for everyone. It would make it better for F1 esports because we still sometimes suffer from desync and whatsoever, and it really, pains us as drivers because we just want to compete at the highest level, have a fair competition. If you lose, you lose. If you win, you at least know you won fair, you lost fair. But if there are so many factors which you have to think about, it just doesn't really make fun.
Can I chime in there? I actually disagree with that because I think these days that everyone's internet is good enough. Peer-to-peer is mostly okay. You still get lag bubbles in iRacing, in particular when you're racing the F1 cars because they're so fast. You know, if someone chops you over and the game sort of expect you to go straight, whatever, there is lag bubbles, and sometimes they are up to like a meter. They're big lag bubbles sometimes. Don't get me wrong, iRacing is better having dedicated servers than peer-to-peer, but I think maybe 10 years ago when a lot of people had rubbish connections and there was lagging everywhere, but I think the average connection now I think is good enough. And okay, you know, I'll trust you on it because you play a lot more online than me, but when I do play online, I don't really tend to get that many issues with lag bubbles or, you know, it's more griefers, I think, is a bigger issue, really, than actual people's connection itself. I don't know. I personally, for me, dedicated servers would be a relatively low priority. It'd be a nice thing to have, but I'd rather get more people into online or have new modes or, I don't know, other things over dedicated servers.
I mean, the thing with new modes, I totally agree, because there's literally nothing than just going for a race. There could be something like, I don't know, maybe capture the flag with F1 cars. I don't know. Like, it just, I don't know.
I want that in F1 esports as the qualification mode. Capture the flag, teams play against each other, and if you, depending on your points, that's your starting grid. Listen, F1 esports, that's exactly how it should be in the future.
Or team deathmatch, something like that. Like kind of stock car
That's
crash
my
challenge.
chance to finally go pro in F1. Yes!
I mean, open lobbies are already team deathmatch, so it doesn't really matter. But yeah, I agree. Like, there is improved internet nowadays, but I still think like dedicated servers is something that has to follow in the near future. Otherwise, like, it will just always stay the same experience. And if people see, okay, there's more effort maybe going into the online world of the game, they might also try it out a bit more, rather than just like immediately focusing on, oh, my team, oh, single player career mode, oh, 2-player career mode.
Even if it would be like a character progression, right? There are other titles, games, not necessarily racing games, where you progress your character even online, right? You buy stuff or you unlock clothes. Now that F1 Live has it, it could actually work for multiplayer as well, right? You only get this jacket if you got 10 open lobby race wins or if you reach 200 points on multiplayer races, right? So there could be connections. But if we then look at the single player side and not want to go too much into the technical stuff, because if we talk about lag, we would need to talk about the prediction system as well, right? Because it's not always necessarily lag. It could be the prediction system, especially when you talk about iRacing, right? And it's like, because it's so quick, There is always a prediction system to avoid the lag issues with slower internet connections. That could be an issue. But what would you be missing then on the single player side? If we just look purely at what happened to career mode, because we went from single championships to career to first career mode with stories to what is now F1 Live, which brings so much more around into the career mode. Is there still anything where you look at with your community and be like, that's what I really miss in single player?
Red flags.
That did come to
why would
mind.
you want red flags in single player? You're sitting at home, be like, oh, Spa, there's a lot of rain, just got cancelled. Not playing today.
Not like permanent red flags, temporary red flags, yeah. Not a 3-lap race and then that's it. That's
Imagine
a
it starts
story.
raining just a little bit, like a little drizzle, and there's a bug and complete red flag.
Yeah, he always wanted like control about where he's racing and how long, and then the game will just be like, sorry, Alex, red flag today.
I don't know. To be honest, there's not anything that massively springs to mind for career, which I guess shows that's where their focus is. For me, it's being similar to what you see on TV. So yeah, red flags. Quite a few seasons ago, I was crying out for an overtake button because they were always talking on the team radio, use overtake, and it wasn't in the F1 game.
No, they meant subscribe to overtake. That's completely different.
Very good. Well done. No, but I don't know, just anything that you hear in real life. A lot of people were saying about they want porpoising in F1 22. And, I've spoken to David Greco, the chief handling designer on this, and he basically said that, well, the first thing people will play will do will be try and dial out the porpoising, because that's what the team's trying to do. That's the best performance. So that's the first thing they do. And also, it's just not a very nice experience. No team wants porpoising.
Yeah.
So it's kind of weird that the players go, well, no, I want porpoising. But the reason is because they want to play what they see on TV. That's the reason. They want to see particularly the bigger stories, any team radio, anything they're talking to their drivers about, and like I say, the overtake button's a good example. It's an older one now because that obviously is in the game now. But I think it's just purely getting it as close as possible to what you see on TV and feeling like you are an F1 driver. You are a rookie coming into F1, working your way up. You're building your team up in my team or playing driver career and trying to get promoted. I think the progression could be improved. I think it's quite easy to work your way up to sort of Mercedes, even if you don't have fantastic results, if you start out in the Haas or something. I definitely think that could possibly be improved. Make it a bit, to some extent, a bit more of a grind without making it a grind, if that kind of makes sense, feel like you earned it a bit more.
Yeah.
And perhaps the individual results as well. If you've got a race win and you just won in a Haas, make a bigger deal out of it. That in real life, can you imagine how much of a big deal that would be? In the game, it's like, oh, congrats, you won. Anyway, next race. You know what I mean? So I feel like maybe it'd be a bit more rewarding, perhaps, would be my main one with a bit more progression mixed in with that.
But then they would need to look into a lot of small teams, right? I just read up on it yesterday, actually, during the drive here to Berlin, that Minardi, when they actually scored points back there with Mark Webber in Australia, was it 2002, something around that? I don't know. I might be wrong on this. But they actually had their own podium celebration afterwards, because he got points. And I think they became fifth or something. And they went on the podium afterwards together with one of the mechanics. And we're like celebrating so hard because Minardi got points, right? which normally never happens. I think they got in over 25 years. No, they had 25 years of racing and they did 36 points across 345 GPs they did. So yeah, they could make a bigger thing out of it if you're in a lower team. I would then wish for Günther Steiner to be actually in the game and have all his lines.
He is in the game, but he just doesn't say his...
Yeah, he doesn't say the best lines. Why is there no best of Günther Steiner in the career mode?
Maybe also Netflix team now following you around because of F1 Live, always looking for some
But just imagine
drama.
there could be a YouTube feature. It's like if you're a content creator and then there's a Netflix Drive to Survive feature in the game and they actually create an episode out of your race.
And then you get a copyright claim. Lovely. Simply lovely.
So it's realistic. Great. And you would need to pay for all the licenses and Max Verstappen wouldn't talk to you in game. That's just how it is. No. Okay, so you would say single player is in a good state, right? Because we have so much already which is out there. I mean, nowadays, even though we lost Jeff, right, who isn't the mechanic anymore in the career mode telling you what to do, and there is already so much around it. But then the question for me would be, why is that not a multiplayer? Why is multiplayer then really toned down to just racing?
I actually think he just summed it up, like the issue of multiplayer. It's just not what they see on TV. Like, this is literally the problem. Like, if multiplayer would have something like you said with what you just said with the character development, maybe like actually cutting F4, F3, F2, maybe some LMPs or GT racing. I don't know. I mean, it's their F1 game in the end. Like, they can't expand everywhere. But I guess with the FIA license and everything, maybe F3.
But is anyone racing F2 currently? Because you can race it online. Is anyone racing that?
Some, but I guess it would make more sense if it would actually have like also the lower ranks, because F2 is already
so basically like the A, B, C class in iRacing, where you say like you can't go online immediately in F1 car.
Like earn a super license, because in the end there is actually like a ranked system with like, I don't know, is it also called A, B, C, D and then S, which is the super license?
Can't remember.
There is something like that, but it doesn't mean anything. Like, it's literally just completely irrelevant. You can race anything with the super license, and you can also race everything without the super license. So it's just like just having it on your profile, but nobody checks the profile. So there's again this lack of why would you actually want it if it's like nobody cares about it. Like, if you have it, nobody's going to be impressed. It's not like camouflage that you unlock in Call of Duty, which takes like a month to grind on.
The golden AK and all that.
yeah, something like that. Or it's just that is like the biggest thing that's holding back multiplayer. But one thing that I wanted to add to single player, which I really don't like about the F1 game, there is no driver career. Yes, you can take over your own driver into a team, but because fans want to also maybe simulate the career of a driver, maybe a road to glory Mick Schumacher or something like that, like taking over Mick and taking him to Ferrari, winning championships, you can't take over a real driver. I think that's just like, it's so easy to just be able to play as Mick Schumacher, Sebastian Vettel, Lewis Hamilton, someone. Like, they don't have this feature. And every single year, I'm just like, okay, are they adding it in? It shouldn't be that much effort. No, it's not there. You always have to create your own driver. It doesn't look like you. It doesn't feel like you. And you might just want to actually like simulate being Mick Schumacher, Fernando Alonso. I think that would be a great feature, because fans want to simulate what they see on TV. And
I'm just imagining the like directors of like EA at home sat home going, it's not that easy.
Yeah,
what are you doing? It's so easy.
I'm sorry. I don't mean to criticize anyone here. All right, it's just like, I think this needs to be a feature in the future. Yeah.
Now that you say it, it actually sounds quite obvious.
Yeah, but I can pretty much guarantee you it's licensing, right?
Yeah.
Mick Schumacher in F1 22 cannot drive for Ferrari because he drives for Haas.
But then why can't Marcel Kiefer, like a complete random character in the game, drive for Mercedes? And you can...
But wait, can't drivers in the career mode or in mighty mode actually change teams?
Yeah,
they can.
Yeah, true, they can.
So why wouldn't that work when I play the character?
Don't really have an answer for you there. Fair point. I forgot about that, to be honest. So.
Yeah, I don't know. That's something that I really would like to see. Like, just being able to take over the driver and doing a road to glory. Maybe Fernando Alonso back to... well, he is at Renault.
So now we know we've got Marcel Kiefer, the F1 esports pro, but he would rather like to be someone else.
Yeah, I mean, for YouTube series, like as a German, maybe Mick Schumacher or Sepp win one more title and then retire.
I definitely think you could do more history stuff, potentially. Like coming in...
That is the license issue.
But no, like they've had historic cars before. Come in as Lewis Hamilton in 2007. Build it up a bit. Say, it's your rookie year. It's your first race. You're against the world champion, Fernando Alonso. Try and impress on your debut. You know what I mean? And big it up. It might just be a one-off thing, or it could even be a whole season. Perhaps just have... I've always said to them before, they should do more kind of challenges based on actual history.
Like they do on all the sports games.
Like the early 2010 games. They had these challenges. Like, you're Fernando Alonso and you have to
and I love
win.
Them.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed... Or you go back even further. Be Senna against Prost. And be like, change history or repeat history, whatever it may be. I think there's a lot of history that then don't tap into that well. I know they've only just got rid of classic cars, but to be honest... I don't know about you. I didn't use classic cars very much. I didn't love them because they were just cars. I think if you had challenges and history in, suddenly it's interesting.
There was actually a great feature for online, because you could just like switch the cars and say, okay, everyone's driving the Williams from 1992 or something. It was completely different. Like it's the same with the F2 cars. That's why F2 online is really fun, because everyone's always driving F1. And then there's maybe one guy that's totally cracked on F2 and actually even destroys me or is super close to me. And I'm just like, what is going on? Do I have to retire from my career? And then no, it's just the kid that spends like his whole day on F2 time trial and he knows exactly how to drive the car. But that's the fun of it. Like, you actually have like these different experiences. And I think in the F1 game, everything's a little bit stale. and just like always the same and repetitive. And I would like some basic features that would just make it a bit more interesting, like classic cars, or maybe even a concept F1 car without limitations.
Don't worry, I will beat you on the supercars if you want.
Good luck.
Might not happen.
Supercars not being an online feature, I don't understand it. It would be great. Maybe licensing, maybe something. I don't know, but why add something like that in and you can't race?
One thing I think would be good to spice up online would be, we're talking about progression and how you can make it more interesting than just the same thing over and over again. Introduce like basically a My Team car.
Yeah.
So when you're new to the game, it talks you through it. It says, right, this is your team, this is your driver. You're not going to win at first.
Yeah.
You know, and it's the same as in F1, right? If a brand new team comes in, they're not going to be at the top. So although people might be frustrated with, like, I can't win this race because my car's not good enough, I think if you build up the story enough,
that's
just like
actually
career
a really
mode,
good idea. Yeah.
then you would go, well, okay, I'll take a P15 this first race, and that's a good result. Oh my God, the fastest car's just crashed out. I've gained a position, I've scored a point, amazing, and then big reward, you've got a point, I've now got some more money I can spend on upgrading my car. You see, I mean, you could have progression of just the car, even if it's not necessarily the driver or whatever.
Instead of leveling up, you kind of get R&D points and then you can... Yeah, that's a great idea, actually. Like,
there you go, we're solving the F1 game right on the couch.
That should be a separate online mode, like one of these modes, like capture the flag, then getting back... they will
on the next Nitro Nights, we will visit EA and Codemasters and tell them all about our exciting ideas. We get into development now. No, guys, I really can't thank you enough for this. I really like the discussion, but I think at one point we have to bring it to an end, because otherwise everyone out there has to sit in front of YouTube for way too long instead of actually doing sim racing, which is not okay. But thanks very much for joining me.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Coming to an end of another Nitro Nights episode, and obviously we want to hear your opinion. Do you like single player more, multiplayer, and for what reason? So let us know in the comment section down below. Let's discuss, let's figure out why we all love the F1 franchise or sim racing, virtual racing in general. Also, we would really appreciate if you hit the subscribe button, ring the bell, and follow all the Overtake content. And while we talk about Overtake content, why not check out our latest Nitro Nights episode, the one before this one actually, or check out Emily's first video on the Overtake channel, where she discuss all the new things in iRacing about the AMG GT3. My name is Rene, and I'll see you guys next time.